Stand up for yourself, and I'll back you up. 'Cause problems don't solve themselves. I'll tell you what, instead of would or could, I think you should draw a line in the sand and stand your ground. It's for your own good.
Hello. I want to thank you for joining us again for the next episode of The Voice of Families and Addiction. My name is Roy Poyon, and I'll be your host today. And with me is our guest, Jonathan.
Yes, my name is Jonathan Joaquin. I am the owner and founder of ClevelandBlockCoaching.
We're pleased to have Jonathan join us today. We've got some exciting things to go through. This episode is best titled in a way that we can identify the content of what we'll be discussing. We're going to be discussing today the excellence of one of the nation's highest valued treatment centers. And we're only saying that because of their performance. We don't give out awards, and I don't know that there are awards given out in this particular industry yet, but when they are finally done, this will certainly be one of the groups. Now, Jonathan, in his journey with substance use disorders, has had the experience of meeting and being treated by more than one facility, and this gives him the opportunity to kind of cross-compare. So we're not going to get so much into Jonathan's journey of his substance use disorder per se, as much as we are itemizing the different levels of care and how those different levels kind of transition in what we often refer to as the continuity of care. And anybody that's been with me for a couple of episodes know how important I emphasize this as a role of the family. To be involved in the continuity of care is critical to the advantage of not just the person, the individual person, but the family members, and especially those that are giving them services. Because when all three understand pretty much the same thing about the situation that they're dealing with and where you are in the continuity of care, then you can collaborate and get a lot more success and value out of the time spent, the efforts put forth, and hopefully move forward in the process. Now, the process typically will have a continuum of a treatment plan. So, we're using two vocabularies here. Continuity of care, we want to look at that as being the site in which the care is delivered. And the continuum of the treatment plan is a document that gets modified. It's constantly in motion and should be, because the person themselves are constantly in motion. So, Jonathan, once again, thank you for joining us today on The Voice of Families and Addiction. Tell us a little bit about where you were prior to when this all started.
So prior to my journey through the different treatment centers, I was in college. Specifically, it was my junior year when I had my first interaction with the treatment center during that summer. Prior to that, I was in college in North Carolina. Before that, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, local boy.
Mm-hmm. Well then, so at some point, and we're going to start now the continuity of care concept as the building blocks of what got you where you are today, which is just fabulous, I might add, as a concluding thought in the beginning of this discussion. Where we are today in this timeline, you're actually being introduced to the idea. Where were you when the first interaction came about, and what did that involve?
So my first interaction with any type of treatment care or continuity treatment was, I was 20 years old, and it was through an intervention. I had just come back from school. My parents actually brought me back, and about a week later, I did have an intervention at home from a third party. Okay,
so this is a man or a woman who actually kind of came into the family realm at the family's request. A very smart move on the family's part, I might add. And now you're starting to struggle with the idea that this isn't really a give or take operation here. We're telling you this is where you need to go, and although you have a choice, the choice not to is probably pretty bad.
Yes, and the choice was made clear, and it was less about going and not going, the intervention was very powerful because I received letters from my grandparents, my parents, aunts and uncles that had described what my behaviors were doing to them and the changes that they noticed in me. It brought awareness to things that I was not aware of, and hearing the truth and seeing some of the writing, it hit really hard. There were some things in my letters that were really difficult to stomach, that I wasn't aware to how I was behaving and acting, and it became, and I, in the back of my head, I did know it was an issue. I thought it was something that I could come through, but the intervention brought that to light, and having my family together, was my parents, I had an aunt as well as my grandparents there, and having them hold space and bring awareness to my behaviors and where I currently was. It was the first time that I was actually slowed down enough to see where I was and what was happening.
How long a time period did that take? Was that like an hour's meeting or 3 hours or?
It was about an hour.
Must have been excruciatingly painful.
It truthfully was. I wanted to get out of it as fast as possible. And saying yes to it was also like, maybe I can think my way out of it, to be completely honest.
Yeah, put a little space between me and the issue.
Yep, but within, say it was like an hour 15-minute conversation, within like through later that evening, I was on a plane to my first facility.
Hello, Hopkins.
Yes.
So with that in mind, we've talked in other episodes about Petrasca di Clemente's 5 stages of change, the first being pre-contemplation. And William Miller and Rolnick have created the motivational interviewing, which helps us move from pre-contemplation to contemplation, and from contemplation to preparation, and then from preparation to action. And it sounds like you actually went through the stages, whether you thought it was the best thing for you or not. But it seems that it worked in the sense of, in an assessment in pre-contemplation, we typically think, I don't have a problem, you guys have the problem, why are we here? To an awareness of, this is really what you look like. And the other person starts to think in their mind, well, I don't want to look like that, I want to look like this. This is what I thought I looked like. But I realized from this assessment or comments back that that's not me, and I don't like that. So deep in your hearts of heart, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you're starting to suggest that maybe you need to contemplate, what might be. And what Miller and Rolnick says is, in motivational interviewing, that's when you offer them a menu. Give them a choice. Don't sit there and say, well, let's look into this. Come to the meeting with that in mind, families. And that's what we discussed in the 5 stages. So now you're kind of proving out that, okay, so we went into contemplation, and they said, did they actually describe to you where you were going and what you were doing at that point? Or was that something that was found out in the journey there?
I was told that there was a facility that was awaiting my arrival. There was a primary care plan put together.
Wow.
And the plane ticket was already booked for me, as well as my interventionist. He was essentially my case manager through this whole process. And that was about it. It was you're either going or you're no longer going to be here.
How comforting was it, although you may not have realized it then, but maybe as you started to move into it, to know that there was actually a plan of care, that somebody had a forethought of a pathway
knowing that my parents had reached out and they had created this plan and they wanted so desperately what was best for me, even though I couldn't see it. That's love right there, and that's more moving than anything. And another big part was that my interventionist had also been through the program where I was going. Mm-hmm. He was also a graduate of this program's psychology school, mm-hmm. and he was familiar with the area, so he understood the background that I came from and was able to relate through his own struggles, and it was actually comforting.
So did he impart that to you while he was saying, listen, I've done what you're going through?
Yes.
Okay. At any point, did somebody berate you or say, you should just will yourself out of this, what's the matter with you, or anything along that line during those discussions?
No one else did, except for myself in certain ways, to be honest. But my family was supportive. Even the letters that had shown my behaviors, I knew it wasn't out of anger, it was out of love what they were saying. And
right.
not taking it personally was something I had to work on.
Yeah, there were in the past, in terms of intervention and starting somebody from addiction, we've got a banner that we've shown before where it shows the 5 stages of addiction, starting with experimentation and ending with full addiction. And then it drops into the big river of now you're going into detox.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, well, they probably do, what a transition that really is. I mean, that's formidable. Sometimes just taken by putting your fingers on your nose and jumping into the water and hoping you don't, drown a second time by not making it through detox. But with that in mind, now you're showing up in Minnesota, and what happens then?
Yes, so we flew out of Hopkins to Minnesota, and I ended up at the Hazleton Youth Center for Recovery and Addiction. My interventionist was with me when we went through the check-in, and after that, you could say I was dropped off at summer camp.
Hello, mother. Hello, father.
Yes, where I found out I would be there for the next 3 months in a primary care.
Right.
Part of the intake was an assessment of where I was, what my substances were, what my perception was, as well as the case notes that my interventionist had from my parents. My intervention letters accompanied that, as well as any information that they had about my past and how they perceived what was going on. I did take a physical drug test, and all of that came together to create my treatment plan, which included detox, maintenance for any of the substances that I was on, and then after my 3 months there, it was, you will have another evaluation. As you said, the plan continues to go in motion and grows with the individual.
Mm-hmm. So at what point did they start to, there are 3 stages of relapse, and they typically, we find in a good detox, they're setting you up for the transition, again, another river, and you jump over it into your treatment program. Some are just seamless, others are a little bit rougher because you're picking up your bedding and you're actually going to another wing of the building or even another institution, which seems to me to be very disruptive. But things are set up the way they are. With that in mind then, when you actually started to get an understanding of where you were on the latter part of detox, what was your perspective of what sat in front of you?
So I will say, before the plane ride, I did get my last fix. And so as I was being revealed to my plan and I'm coming down, I realized that this is really real. And to your point with the transition, everything was on site. So the check-in, the detox, the primary care, everything was right there. So there wasn't a lot of movement.
Good.
But yeah, in front of me, it was like, this is real. This isn't a game. This is where my best thinking got me. Is this really where I want to be and who I want to be?
Did they start medical assisted treatment at detox, or when you started your treatment plan in the primary care setting?
So it was, first you would go to detox. I think it was between 2 to 7 days, depending
Typically
on what someone came in for.
Yeah.
I believe I had a 3-day, 3-night detox, where every few hours someone would come in and check your vitals.
Excellent.
If there was prescriptions or if there was maintenance for what we were on, they would provide that as well. So like Suboxone was an example of that.
Okay.
A lot of monitoring of the vitals. I remember that. And then we would have meetings with the counselors during that detox just to see where our heads were at. How are we feeling? Because there is a big change in the brain chemistry from up to down. And it's, needed that constant reminder that I'm here right now and this is the right thing. Because I'll be honest, I could have checked out. I was above 18. I was able to sign myself out, and I needed that reminder.
Against medical advice, yeah, it's not encouraged. Yeah. Sometimes families give the person an out. I'll come and get you. It's okay. Those mean people, how dare they do that to my lovely child?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that wasn't your case. But when we start to look at when all of a sudden you're not in group yet, you're more in a detox group setting, and everybody's kind of like, this is really bad. So at this point, the drug's not fully out of your system after 7 days, but and your dopamine dump hasn't really taken on its own responsibility yet. It's still kind of waiting, and the cravings are being subdued by the Suboxone, But if that Suboxone wasn't there, the cravings would be enormous.
Correct.
And your hippocampus in the reward part of your brain would tell you, hey, listen, we really enjoyed that last time. You need to do everything you can to get it. Are these accurate descriptions looking back on what you might have thought was going on in your brain?
When I look back and think about what was going on in my brain, it was really, I was in flight or fight, because it was, how do I get out of here? I can get out of here. Where would I go? I mean, I tried to plan that out. At the same time, also battling in the heart of my hearts that this is not who I am. I had loved ones that just had a powerful intervention with me. They were showing me with who I am and held a mirror up to me, and it was a big choice. And actually part of that choice was that through detox, I actually stopped taking any of the maintenance medicines. I said, I'm just going to do this. If I'm going to become clean, I'm not going to go that route. And that was just a commitment that I made to myself, neither right nor wrong.
Sure. It's individual. Okay. So now your case manager is walking in and saying, okay, Jonathan, this is your next stage, and we're going to start to treat in the plan of treatment a little bit differently. We're going to start to do, now what does your treatment involve?
Yes, so my case manager dropped me off, went through detox, and then I ended up meeting with a counselor for primary care who became my group session counselor as well. She outlined the agreement that as a patient what we would do, for instance, what was prohibited, what was allowed, what our outdoor time would look like, how they were going to like what checking the vitals would look like, as well as we were working books, questions, pamphlets, handouts as well for more insight on ourselves and what I guess the homework aspect would be of that as well.
Describe that for a minute. I'm interested in it. So they're asking you to reflect to yourself, kind of a self-examination and also possibly an inventory? Okay, good. Was that helpful?
It was. Actually, that's what got me starting into journaling, and still to this day I use reflection and journaling, and that's part of my daily practice.
Good for you. Yeah, a lot of people put that to the side after they get out. With that in mind then, now when did you start to come into your first group session and then your first individual session?
So it was, I believe it was right after detox. We were given our assignments, so we were in little dorms with 4 to 5 other patients. And from there we were given our group, so we would have group once a day for a few hours with, I think it was like 7 to 8 other co-patients.
Have you talked with your family or talked with anybody out in the outer world there? At this part of the continuum?
I believe my interventionist was checking in. We were allowed 10-minute phone calls every day.
Did you take them?
I did, but I did not call my parents. For a while.
I don't mean to laugh, but do you mind sharing why?
I didn't know what to say to them.
Fair enough.
I was in a place where it's like, who am I? Like, what have I just done? What am I going through? What's my future? And I don't want to say I was paralyzed with my thoughts. I had all these emotions and I didn't know who to talk to. So I was reaching out to some friends.
Which emotions did you have?
So there was a lot of guilt and shame, not only from my drug use and what had happened in the past, but also from the intervention, because now my family has witnessed me in a different way. There's no going back. My grandparents encountered that, and that's now a part of my relationship with them, and that was really hard.
That is hard.
There was anger towards myself for, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah.
And for also being in this facility that, it's like, man, you couldn't have sent me to a beach, Like there were those odd thoughts as well, where it was just a lot of anger, guilt, resentment, shame.
That's a lot for anybody to deal with. Did they give you any anxiolytics or something that might have soothed those emotions as a symptom? Or did they make it available to you?
There were different resources available, whether it was medication or being able to talk with the counselor. There were also floor help as well, that you were able to interact with other assistants who were in training.
How helpful was that?
Talking really helped. But the journaling and just writing my thoughts down was one of the most effective things, because I was able to just get my thoughts out of my head, and I could just feel a little bit of clarity, and I was able to see what thoughts I was up against, like what beliefs did I currently have that weren't in alignment with where I wanted to go. So it really made things, it really did help.
What was it like to look at yourself in a review of that document that you wrote and see, oh, this is really where I am? How'd you feel about that? I mean, the real feeling of...
It's very real. Realizing that this is the reality I created for myself, and that I had full ownership throughout the whole process of this.
So technically, your mind is starting to see this. And if we were to get into the science of the mind, it's recording that it's seeing this, just the way that it recorded the positive, because it records everything. And now it can be recalled upon demand. So at this point, are they starting to, now you're, say, week 2, 3, and what you said was a 3-month kind of a residential PHP program, then with that in mind, are you starting to learn about cognitive behavioral therapy or anything along the line of trauma?
In our group sessions, we were able to talk about our past. We were able to talk about what we were currently feeling. And we weren't explained like cognitive behavioral therapy. However, I see elements reflecting back. I see the elements were clearly there.
Yeah. They didn't say this is what we're doing. They just did it. You didn't realize they were sticking these things into columns, which now you see in the manuals.
Yes.
That's what the therapist is supposed to be doing.
Right.
That's what it should be, yeah.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, now you're going to your first group. What was that like?
I was very quiet.
Were you?
You're in there with 7 to 8 other people, and I wasn't sure what to say. Part of it was just listening. Part of it was there was some unworthiness in there, and it said, I'm not worthy of sharing my story, or who cares.
Right.
This is for me to deal with. There was very much that lone wolf mentality.
Yeah.
Since I was in the 18 and younger category, there were a variety of ages there.
Okay.
So part of me said, well, I can't relate to them. So there were things that I held myself back from, but it was comforting just to be there with other people. I remember in the first group, there was a process every day in group where you were allowed to go to another group and acknowledge people for something. And it could be like, hey, I acknowledge that, you said you had a really good conversation with your parents, or I acknowledge that you opened up to me earlier, and, we were able to talk about some things, and we made some perspective shifts. And that caught my eye, because it says, I want to be a part of that.
Nice. You saw the enrichment in it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So very positive. Good.
Yes.
Now you're going into your first individual session in this continuum. What was that like?
I remember we had to go over the rules again. There was a very set structure on, you will wake up at 7 o'clock. You will make your bed a certain way. There were room checks. Everyone had jobs to do.
Yeah.
There were things at first, it's like, I'll do them, but I'm not going to do them fully. I wasn't fully committed to myself, and that showed.
Self-care, or just being resistant, rebellious about being in this process?
There was some resistance and rebellion to this process.
Fair enough.
The you don't know what you're talking about type of approach. I know everything, because obviously my best thinking got me here, so clearly I know everything.
Yes. Yeah. I don't mean to laugh.
No, it's okay to laugh.
So now you're meeting with your psychologist, and what was that like, and how was it different than, what was more productive with the psychologist than maybe what you might have experienced in group?
So the one-on-one, it allowed me to open up more in a safe place. Even if I didn't want to, I found myself opening up and just letting out what was going on.
Okay.
In the one-on-one setting, there was no judgment. My perception was that there was no judgment like I felt in the groups, even though there was none. I know that was made up. But it was a really comfortable setting, and I was able to get more intimate with my thoughts, what I was feeling, what I was going through, my situations in life. For instance, I'd gone off to this rehab, and I had a girlfriend long distance. So how do I deal with that? So there was It was a comforting place to open up, and I felt that I could open up about the more serious things that were on my mind.
And now you're more or less starting this repeating, week by week group so many times a day. They're probably starting to integrate more things like hobbies, or because they want to build your rapport
Yes.
of how can I have a healthy life after this. Because we know that we know the journey. I mean, we know it down. There's nothing new about what you went through.
Right.
And a part of that is you give up all your friends, you give up all your hobbies, your interests, and now we're out of group becoming more, oh, you're this, I'm this. Okay, I'm seeing some things you're not that I am, and then an individual, you're really taking a deeper dive into, well, how do I feel about all this? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Correct me if I say anything that's not true. But now you're starting to say, and they're starting to add into the program, what do you like? And where's your mindfulness? Yes. And then eventually we'll teach you about how to command mindfulness and how to command the self-esteem and self-value and worth, because those have to be relearned, reintroduced, brought in a very tender way, because it's this, in the psyche, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got everything you need on the first tier, and now we're talking about things like esteem. Yes. Well, what's involved in esteem? Well, we have to really help you to help yourself in rebuilding esteem. So did you notice that those building blocks were coming around into your schedule?
Yes. So every night we did have some type of nightly meditation before bedtime. Either it was an out loud meditation where we would relax, or it was some type of mindfulness practice of just taking some quiet time, feeling what's going on the inside, just noticing, becoming aware. And also, the longer that you spent, I believe it was after 3 weeks, we were allowed to go to the YMCA and workouts. They started to incorporate like the physical balance in there.
Plus you're getting out of the building.
Yes.
Which is everything, I'm sure.
That was a lot.
I can relate. So with that in mind now, are you starting to sit there and did you see your esteem growing? I mean, was you conscious of the fact that you're feeling more comfortable with self? Maybe I'm not such a bad guy. Maybe this is doable.
The guilt and shame from the intervention was stuck with me even up till a few years ago, something that I was still working through.
Yeah, okay.
What I was ready to do, I was counting down the days after a few weeks saying, when do I get to my 90 days? I'm ready to go back to school. Sure. I'm ready to get my life on the road. Okay. Like I get it. But I didn't really get it. And
isn't that something we do that in healthcare too. Yeah. I want to get out in my nursing rehab program. I don't have to go down and work out with the physical therapist. Yeah, it's very natural. So now you're starting to see that you're going to need more support when you're getting out, because the horizon of getting out is probably starting to come closer.
Yes.
How did you feel about that next step of, okay, I'm going to leave Oz and I'm going back to the regular world again. Yeah, here's the balloon that's going to come and take me there.
So I ended up staying in Oz for another 3 months at their extended care.
Good. So that's a different program. Are you doing an IOP at this point?
It's so same facility, inpatient.
Okay, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful program. Yeah. So you went from residential to partial residential to IOP, and in each stage, correct me if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, so it was all it was all in the same facility, and it was all there inpatient 24/7.
Step down of programs.
Yeah, step down. Yep.
Okay. Kudos for Hazleton.
Yeah.
I mean, the right way to do it, certainly. Incorporate best practice protocols, empirically proven studied materials, which they do.
Yep.
And then put in just highly qualified credentialed people, which they do. And you've got a world-class experience, which you did. So now you're getting ready to go out. What were some of your tribulations as you kind of like approach the edge and, okay, I'm going to be taking a flight home in about 2 weeks?
So when the point came before I went to extended care?
Okay, let's go there.
Okay, just with the progress. So when it came to going to extended care, there was some hesitation.
Okay. Why do you think?
I just didn't want to spend another 3 months there.
Oh, there was hesitation that you're still here.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's I want to get going. I want to go back to school. I miss my friends. I miss my family.
So is this the point that when people mostly would AMA out and say against medical advice, no, I'm done.
Right.
You may not think I'm done, but I'm done.
Yeah.
Parents, don't listen to them when they do that, is my statement to our listening audience.
Right. And what I realized after the 3 months, not only did extended care, they provided more freedom. We had outings. We were able to go
Nice.
out to meetings instead of having in-house meetings
Okay.
as they were at primary care. There was more freedom, which was probably the biggest thing.
Did you find yourself using your coping skills in some of those outings because they weren't controlled now? It's kind of like a trigger might hit you and you referred back to kind of like your education. Did those type of things happen? And I'm challenging you. Could you give me an example of maybe one that did?
So, for instance, I remember we went to the Mall of America. They have roller coasters. They have aquariums, and you're going through the aquarium. You're like, man, this would be pretty cool on some,
Yeah, I'd be high on this.
Or you see someone smoking cigarettes, and you notice, hey, they only smoked half of it. There were triggers like that were out there, but being in there with a community of people that were committed to themselves the best that they could at that time, that did help. And extended care slowly introduced us back out. We didn't have those outings in primary care, but with extended care it was, okay, how do I balance what I'm learning in my group, in my own development, and where I want to go, rather than throwing us out the door and say, all right, go back to your same friends, go back to your same environment.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
We'll see you again.
Yep.
So with that in mind then, as you, Mall of America example, and trigger, okay, did you consciously tell yourself, no, this is the way I'm supposed to think when I see that? How does that work inside your own thought life?
So at the time it was, I'm just not going to think about it. I know that's not good for me.
You consciously told yourself that?
Yes.
Wow, that's great.
I was aware of the behaviors that would not serve me.
Yeah.
But I was not yet aware of my foundation, which is my thoughts, emotions, and beliefs.
Yeah.
That were the basis for those behaviors. I didn't get that deep. I didn't have that understanding.
Not yet.
But I was aware of the behaviors that would not serve me.
So now you're, in terms of the mind, your prefrontal cortex is kicking in with your executive functioning. So now logic, reasoning is commanding a greater role, and your other parts of the left side of the brain, pleasure being driven number one, isn't dominating your prefrontal cortex thought life. So technically, not too technically, because I'm not a scientist, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm not all that bright, but you're rewiring your brain. Yeah. Is that how you understand it to be?
I didn't know it at the time.
No.
But looking back, that's what I was doing. I was able to start becoming aware of the behaviors, and then eventually realizing the thoughts, the beliefs, and the values.
Well, that's really something. So now you're going to go and you're on the flight and you're coming home. What are your thoughts?
Well, they reviewed my plan. Again, that's always in motion.
Discharge.
And I was flown to a 3-quarter-way house in Ohio for another 3 months after extended care in Minnesota.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. How was your experience there?
So a 3-quarter-way house, there was quite a lot of freedom. It's not fully sober living, so we did have assistants living with us. I went to Glen Bay. It was in Niles, Ohio.
They're an excellent program also.
Yes, and we had the freedom. There was a curfew, there were rules, but there was a lot of freedom there. And it was really just living in a house with other guys, and how to live life, how to have fun. So we'd watch football games, we would go out, we would play cards at night, but we were all working our own different programs at the same time. And we would have house meetings. There was outpatient therapy that we were allowed to attend the meetings to as well.
So here you are, you actually have a plan that you're aware of the plan now.
Yeah.
You're owning the plan and you're working the plan. And you're also participating in NA or AA.
Yep.
And you're also participating in kind of an aftercare. Is that a safe term, or did that come later?
Yeah, it was all there.
So the term aftercare was used?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Sounds like a very high quality aftercare program. I've seen different levels and they're all fine, but this one sounds a little bit more accountable and hands-on-ish, especially the beginning part. Now you're getting to the end of this extended care or aftercare concept of three-quarter living. Where did you go from there?
I went back to my parents' house.
Okay. How long were you there?
I was there for about a year and a half to 2 years. So after I got out of aftercare, I was home, and within a few weeks, I ended up getting back into school, started taking classes every single semester.
Where'd you go to school?
Notre Dame College, actually.
Nice, yeah.
I was fully upfront with what happened with me. I showed him my transcript from my previous college, which was a 2.4, gave me a full ride, and also some employment opportunities. So I was now enrolled in school, taking summer, fall, spring classes, and working 3 jobs to get my own apartment.
Wow. So, and now we're starting to see like the Maslow hierarchy of needs blocks firmly being put into place by you, and not falsely like propped up with enabling, measures and things of that nature.
Right.
No criticism on the family, but did the family get educated while you were doing all this?
They had gone to Families Anonymous.
Good.
They were actively participating in that as I was going to my meetings.
Okay, so they're growing while you're growing.
They were growing while I was growing.
Do you think that made a difference?
Absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that.
I don't know what else they were involved in. I know they were doing work with my interventionist on the side as well.
Great.
But the parallel of those around me growing that were going to be my support system as well as my own growth, it was the way to move forward the fastest and most effectively.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, obviously, I would think that way, but with this in mind, then, people call it a family disease. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Why?
Well,
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No. I mean, when I point back to my intervention letters and I see how I affected everyone in my life as my use affects how I show up. And whether it's family, friends, we're all a network, we're a cohort, we all work some way.
Yeah, you're a system.
We're a system, and when part of that system fails, there's something in the system that isn't working, and it does affect everyone. I mean, from a parent's point of view, I don't know what my parents' thoughts were, but I can assume, what's going to happen to my kid? How's he doing? Is he going to make it tomorrow? What do I do? They take on that negative energy, that worry, those anxiousness, the lower level emotions, and it does affect them. It affects then how they show up with their friends and their family. If they have shame, they may cover for you, and how you're actually doing when a friend asks them, hey, how's your son doing? Oh, he's great. And they're not telling them that, hey, he just spent 9 months in rehab.
Well, we tend to protect the family image. It's a natural thing to do. The stigma out there is great, and it's going to be a long time before that starts to subside. With the idea that you're going through recovery now, and they say that up to the 5-year marker, at 5 years, you drop to less than 15% likelihood of relapse. That's not the end point, but it certainly is a mile marker in the journey. Where are you now?
So
in that 5-year time span.
So 5 years I would be 25, and I did have a relapse when I was 25.
Oh, in the 5th year.
Yeah, in the 5th year.
That doesn't re-cue, by the way. It just is a bump. Was it a bump or was it a full relapse?
It was about a.
So you continued to use?
It was about a 3-week relapse. I mean, so I'll call it it was a period of time. It is what it is.
Sure it is. Yeah.
I see what I could. I see the options that I have that could have prevented that.
Good. Okay. That clarity, I'm sure, means a lot to you now going forward.
Yes.
And being confident. We do relapse. Diabetics relapse. Asthma patients. Chronic diseases relapse.
Yep.
This is a chronic disease, so we should expect relapses.
Yeah.
How did your family handle the relapse?
I didn't tell them.
Oh, okay.
It was.
Are you telling them now?
If they listen to it.
Okay.
It's something that I had to deal with on my own. Things were going really well for me.
Fair enough.
On the outside, and what I didn't realize is that like I could point out the behaviors that didn't serve me, but I still had some of the same thoughts. What got me into using was I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, right?
Yeah.
And those thoughts still showed up, but in different ways.
Right.
It's not getting to the root of the problem, and I didn't understand that.
Okay.
Now I do, and I see it clearly.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow, what a journey.
Yeah.
I mean, we sign on for life when we come into it. We're in our eternity, is my philosophy. And there was eternity before this. We get 88 years, hopefully. And then we go back to eternity. And the thought is, no, Roy, we were always in eternity, even while we're here. Yeah. It's not like, oh, we'll pick it back up when we get done with here on earth. The question is, what did you do while you were here?
Yeah.
Well, in a lot of cases, and I've said this in the pushing back on addiction modules, where we're using spiritual faith as the discussion, that's when we bring God closest to us. That's when we understand ourselves the best, is in suffering. Yeah. So it's almost like it's part of the exercise of life is to suffer, and it sounds so pathetic to say that, but show me how many times in my life it's happened. Many, some very dramatically. And for other people, I hear the same. Are you a better man now?
100%.
And that's something.
It's incredible, and it's a progression, right? Part of my thinking was, I have to get it right all the time, every single day, and if I could go back and tell 20-year-old me at the intervention, it's just do 1% each day for the next 3.5 months, and you'll be 100% further from where you are. Don't worry about getting it all in one swoop. It's okay.
Yeah, good for you. That's good advice for all of us. And as we start to move forward with our lives, if you're listening to this in some manner, I have to believe that you're following the Voice of the Families and Addiction episodes, because we're kind of like unfolding these leaves, these petals, to what is a beautiful flower called life. The funny thing about a rose petal is it turns this really bad looking brown before it falls off. But then it lets you look a little bit deeper into the rose itself and its composition and its fragrance, and you find out how beautiful it is, even without that other petal that fell off. And so now what we're kind of encouraging, we are, is that don't let this be the end of you looking more closely at the person who's dealing with their journey. Their journey is very real. It's a very beautiful expression of growth and challenges and suffering and love. And wow, isn't that what we all want in who we are? And we don't know what we're going to become. It's a lot of people, politicians will tell you, I know who I am, but we don't. And the best we can do is just what Jonathan said. Don't expect yourself to be the best. Give yourself that percentage, that small percentage, knowing that it'll add on to other positive growth percentages. And that will make in its entirety a beautiful expression of a life well lived. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to add for us?
I think all I'd like to add is that if I can do it, anyone else can do it, and anyone that's listening out there that is struggling with this personally or knows someone, there's hundreds of thousands of examples of people who have done this, and that there is a chance that you can and you will. It comes down to commitment to oneself and the 1% better each day, and that's a big relief from the recovering mind of, I have to get this right tomorrow, I need everything to change. And if I'm committed to myself and committed to just doing 1% and committed to discovering my best self, you're well on your way.
Well, thank you. And for everybody in our listening audience, we're going to continue this dialogue with Jonathan. We're going to go into the next phase of his life and follow us on our next episode, where we're going to learn more about Cleveland Block Coaching. I want to thank you once again. My name is Roy Poyan. I'm a chemical dependency counselor. I'm a certified mental health coach, and I'm the founder of Families Impacted by Opioids. If you'd like to call or talk to us, we're at 440-385-7605. Have a great day, and God bless you.
Stand up for yourself, and I'll back you up, 'cause problems don't solve themselves. I'll tell you what, instead of would or could, I I think you should draw a line in the sand and stand your ground. It's for your own good.